I never imagined I'd be in a situation where I had to defend my rights or that I'd be scammed. I managed to avoid Mei Jim and Jing Baobei, but now I've fallen for this. My son's programming class, the one we just paid for, has disappeared. The problem is we'd only just topped up the card and it hasn't even been 10 days. This parent explained how their child was enrolled in a programming course at a children's institution called Tongcheng Tongmei, but the institution suddenly collapsed. Just now, I casually checked online and found out that the scheme probably collapsed a couple of days ago in other cities. This programming class seems like a massive scam. It was clearly premeditated and organized. They had planned this all along. Before running away, they took at least one round of money from people. You can see from the ads they had, offering discounts before December 31st. When I went to report it to the police, it turned out we had just paid for 10 days of classes, none of which had ever been attended. Some other parents just paid huge amounts, like 80,000 yuan, 70,000 yuan, 50,000 yuan, 150,000 yuan. They were told that their kids would be taken to other cities for competitions during the winter break, so they paid these large amounts. And look at what happened so quickly. They just run off. This is fraud. The parents said they would go to the police station to file a report, but they were certain they wouldn't be able to recover any money. The best they could hope for was that another similar institution might take over the remaining courses, allowing the kids to complete part of the course. She added, "Don't pay for courses up front. No matter if it's a hobby class or a more formal academic training class for your child, never prepay. This is a race. You never know if you'll finish the course before they run away. The outcome is always the same. The only thing that matters is whether you finish your classes first or they run off first. From now on, I swear I will never prepay for courses again, especially for kids' training programs. If it's more than 5 classes, I won't do it." After 10 years of operation, Tongcheng Tongmei, the largest children's programming institution in China, suddenly collapsed. The owner fled, affecting nearly 200,000 families across more than 50 cities. Starting on January 13th, multiple cities across China reported the closure of Tongcheng Tongmei's branches, with parents unable to get refunds and employees facing unpaid salaries. In Chongqing alone, over 2,000 students were involved, with the total amount of money reaching 50 million yuan. Parents nationwide have formed rights defense groups, calling for government intervention. Parents in Zhengzhou revealed that towards the end of last year, the training institution launched heavy marketing campaigns to encourage parents to buy courses. The total amount in Zhengzhou alone was said to be between 40 to 50 million yuan. One parent complained, "So many families have been hurt, and the authorities are either silent or passing the buck. No one is doing anything." In Chengdu, over 40 million yuan of student fees were taken. The government keeps passing the responsibility around. The branch principal says she has no obligation. This is outrageous. A netizen revealed that a branch manager in Guangzhou informed them that the amount of money involved in that city was up to 100 million yuan, with the total nationwide reaching 1.5 billion yuan. According to Chinese media reports, by the end of June 2024, Tongcheng Tongmei had opened 221 directly operated stores across China, enrolling 182,600 students. However, the company recently faced a risk of funding chain rupture. A month before the collapse, Tongcheng Tongmei's 2024 half-year report showed a net loss of 110 million yuan in the first half of 2024, an operating cash outflow of 87.3 million yuan, and only 108 million yuan left in cash reserves. To make matters worse, the situation for the second half of 2024 appeared even more dire. On January 14, 2025, Tongcheng Tongmei reported that sales revenue had begun to fluctuate and decline from the second half of 2024, causing half of the training centers to fall into losses. As of January 16, 2025, Tongcheng Tongmei stated that 128 stores were still operating normally, but many of these stores were facing unpaid wages, unable to refund fees, and were beginning to close. As one of the leading institutions in the children's programming sector, why did it fall into crisis? Analysts believe that, like many other industries in China, the sector grew rapidly due to top-down directives from the CCP leadership, which led to a rush of players entering the market. This caused an industry boom that ultimately led to a market saturated with competition. Tongcheng Tongmei was originally founded as a brand under Tarena International, which was established in 2002 as an adult IT training brand. In 2005, Tarena adopted a pay-after-employment model, which led to rapid expansion. It went public on NASDAQ in April 2014. On June 9, 2014, during a meeting with academicians from the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Chinese Academy of Engineering, CCP leader Xi Jinping emphasized the importance of artificial intelligence and robotics for the first time. Seizing the opportunity, Tarena launched Tongcheng Tongmei, a children's programming brand targeting 8 to 18-year-olds. In December 2015, it opened its first 4 stores in Beijing. At the time, the children's programming industry was growing rapidly. By July 2017, the State Council issued a new generation artificial intelligence development plan, which explicitly called for the gradual promotion of programming education. By 2017 alone, 12 children's programming institutions had secured early-stage financing from angel rounds to Series A. By the first half of 2019, 9 more companies had received financing, some amounting to hundreds of millions of yuan. Reports indicated that in 2018, more than 200 children's programming companies were operating in the market, and by 2019, a new company was being registered every 6 days. Tongcheng Tongmei was one of the industry leaders. In 2016, it launched a robotics course, followed by a programming logic course in 2017, expanding its target audience to children and teenagers aged 3 to 18. In 2018, the company acquired Wuhan Haoxiaozi, the largest robotics programming education provider in Hunan and Hubei, which already had 26 directly operated stores and more than 30 franchise locations. For several years, Tongcheng Tongmei maintained high growth. From 2018 to 2021, the number of its stores grew from 148 to 238. However, as capital began to flood the thriving children's programming market, financing records were constantly being broken, and competition among leading institutions intensified. In March 2021, Walnut Programming completed a record-breaking Series C funding round with $200 million. Meanwhile, third-party estimates put the total market size of the children's programming sector at around 30 billion yuan. In comparison, Tarena International only raised $138 million when it went public in 2014, and Tongcheng Tongmei had not secured independent financing since. Tongcheng Tongmei's aggressive expansion in the following years was primarily funded by its own capital, which laid the groundwork for future financial troubles. Tongcheng Tongmei followed a business model of pre-collecting a large amount of tuition fees and using that capital to build new self-operated stores. This approach allowed for rapid expansion without external financing. However, it also created cash flow problems, as new stores take time to generate large-scale revenue, which made the company's financial situation tight and prone to disruption. In 2017, Tarena International, the parent company of Tongcheng Tongmei, reported its first loss of 147,000 yuan, which rapidly expanded to 590 million yuan the following year. The situation worsened in 2019 when the company was exposed for financial fraud. After a re-audit, it was found that from 2014 to 2018, the company had inflated its revenue by 636 million yuan. Consequently, in 2019, Tarena reported a massive loss of over 1 billion yuan. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic severely impacted Tarena, which mainly relied on offline business. This led to negative revenue growth. From this point on, the management decided to focus on more promising children's programming businesses. In 2023, Tarena decided to divest its increasingly shrinking adult IT training business. In January 2024, Tarena changed its NASDAQ ticker symbol from TEDU to TCTM. On February 28th of that same year, the company completed a restructuring and rebranding, with Tongcheng Tongmei becoming the publicly listed children's programming company. By then, Tongcheng Tongmei had over 230 offline campuses in more than 50 cities across China. Its curriculum offerings included creative programming, artificial intelligence, robotics programming, and informatics Olympiad programming. According to information on the company's website, in 2023, more than 36,000 Tongcheng Tongmei students participated in 12 domestic and international innovation challenges. In 2023, the number of students enrolled in Tongcheng Tongmei reached 210,000, setting a new historic high. However, the company was burdened with heavy costs for staffing, rent, and other expenses. On January 15, 2025, 3 days after the company's collapse, Tongcheng Tongmei issued an offering prospectus in a last-ditch effort to raise funds. Over the past year, the company had been rumored to be seeking financing, but the financial report showed that aside from an 11 million yuan bank loan, there had been no inflow of capital. As of January 21st, the company's stock price closed at just 31 cents US, facing the risk of delisting due to the price being under $1. Founder of Yuan Programming, Li Yi, also mentioned in a media interview that, under the official policies promoting programming education in 2024, programming has become a relatively rigid demand in quality education. However, the market is now crowded with too many players, including over a dozen leading institutions. Even major education giants like New Oriental and TAL Education Group have entered the programming education space. An official from the China Private Education Association stated, some educational institutions failed to recognize the economic downturn's impact on the industry. They still rushed into sectors that appeared to have good development prospects. This led to a phenomenon of excess competition. In recent years, Tongcheng Tongmei has seen a series of leadership changes. In April 2020, the founder of Tarana Technology, Han Xiaoyun, resigned as CEO, and Song Yongji, the company's independent director, took over. However, just a year later, Song Yongji resigned for personal reasons, and Song Ying took over to guide the company through a period of transformation. On November 25, 2024, Song Ying was reassigned to the role of president of international business, and Tang Xiaolan took over as the CEO of Tongcheng Tongmei. Reports from Chinese media indicated that the collapse of Tongcheng Tongmei exposed the challenges of regulating prepayment systems for nationwide chain educational institutions. Parents have criticized the lack of adequate supervision from relevant authorities. Some parents shared images on social media asking, Tongcheng Tongmei was registered with the Science and Technology Association, so how did they manage to take billions of yuan from parents nationwide? Are the regulatory authorities asleep? In fact, with the downturn in China's economy in recent years, the entire education and training industry has seen a wave of closures. On January 23, 2025, a parent posted a video stating that more than 3 months had passed since the educational institution Le Rong Children's Home went bankrupt. As both a victim and a former industry worker, they expressed their frustration.
As the year of the dragon ends, we look back at the education training sector. A brutal scene. How many institutions closed, how many bosses ran away, and how many parents were left in the lurch.
This vlogger continued, saying that over the past year, many educational institutions find it increasingly difficult to recruit new students. What was more concerning was that even existing students were disappearing. Smaller institutions and individual teachers who had benefited from the pandemic subsidies were now facing a tough reality as large capital investments returned to the market. Most individual teachers would be forced back into institutions, but with no money to be made. With the pandemic over and the double reduction policy loosening, many institutions still collapsed in 2024. The vlogger predicted that in 2025, education institutions should avoid catering to the middle class, as this demographic was shrinking. Instead, they should either target the mass market or the wealthy. In 2024, many early childhood education institutions closed. Who could have imagined that in such a populous country, kindergartens would go bankrupt? Once popular kindergartens shut down nationwide, and Shenzhen's Harrow Lida School closed, as did the principal of the Lorsland School in Shanghai. In Beijing, BIS International School shut down due to financial and accreditation issues. Additionally, Qinghan Hutong, the largest Chinese cultural education institution, suddenly collapsed, with over 90 locations shutting down. This became the biggest shock in the education sector in 2024. No one could have predicted that this industry giant, which had been around for 22 years and had over 100 locations nationwide, would face such a crisis. By the end of the year, Tongcheng Tongmei, the leading programming education institution, also collapsed. Even China's largest civil sector training provider, Chongqing Education, went bankrupt. The founder's shares were frozen, and its stock price plummeted, leading to a cash flow crisis akin to a Ponzi scheme. Chongqing students also faced difficulties with refunds. Non-academic institutions were also hit hard, including Beijing's Huaxiang Shengshi, Nanjing's Qiwu Space, and Shanghai's Yidong Sports. Even Shanghai's Kangyuxing Empowerment Center for Children with Autism suddenly shut down, leaving parents without refunds. There were far too many institutions to count. Lastly, in Tianjin, other educational institutions like Tomato Art, Nemo Parent-Child Swimming, Sweet Biscuit International Children's Theater, and Best Mom Parent-Child Swimming also closed down. A vlogger analyzed the implications of the collapse of large education and training institutions. He explained that the closures of these institutions reflect the difficult situation faced by the education training industry, largely due to the current economic downturn. Parents are particularly cautious about education spending, and market demand is shrinking. Many institutions have mismanaged their operations, with blind expansion leading to high costs, interrupted financing, poor regulatory oversight of income, and misappropriation of funds. When business problems arise, parents are left with no way to get refunds. This highlights the need for entrepreneurs to adapt to trends and focus on industries with actual demand. China's industrial development is also constrained by government policies. As is well known, the education and training industry in China faced heavy suppression from the authorities in recent years. In the summer of 2021, the Chinese government launched the so-called double reduction policy, which aimed to reduce the heavy homework and extracurricular training burdens on students. This policy led to the closure of many off-campus training institutions, causing approximately 1 million people to lose their jobs in the education sector. However, after the government imposed a ban of off-campus training, Chinese parents turned to the black market for teachers. These underground tutors provided one-on-one lessons at hourly rates that could exceed 3,000 yuan, and during the annual college entrance examination period, the fees even doubled. In response, the Chinese government introduced measures to crack down on underground tutoring and other covert forms of education, with fines up to 100,000 yuan for violators. Ministry of Education officials even encouraged reporting such activities. Some teachers believe that after the crackdown on off-campus education, parents are facing even higher costs for their children's education. The government seems more concerned with generating revenue through fines than truly addressing the issue. As a part of the crackdown, existing academic institutions were required to register as nonprofit organizations. They were prohibited from listing on stock exchanges or raising funds. Many training institutions affected by external changes faced financial difficulties. It led to the bankruptcy of well-known organizations like Wall Street English, Greenlight Education, and Giant Education. Numerous other institutions also collapsed, sparking protests from parents. Leading educational institutions like New Oriental had to pivot to live-streamed e-commerce to survive. However, in February 2024, the Ministry of Education issued a new document soliciting public opinion on regulations regarding off-campus training. This led to a public debate about possible policy reversal. On X, some users sarcastically remarked, "One-party rule guarantees policy consistency," and "Such flip-flopping is counterproductive." Chen Chuang, a board member of the United Students and Scholars Association in the U.S., told Radio Free Asia, "In a normal country, how could the ruling party issue a red-headed document that completely destroys an entire listed industry? After the destruction, we see a reality. The off-campus education sector isn't really gone. People are still doing what they've always done." It's noteworthy that programming education, particularly off-campus programming training, is an exception to the overall crackdown on the education sector by Beijing authorities. While most off-campus education is being suppressed, artificial intelligence, including off-campus training in AI, has been strongly promoted by the government in recent years. On July 9, 2021, Ni Minjin, deputy director of the Shanghai Education Committee, spoke at the World Artificial Intelligence Conference, discussing the application of AI in education. He pointed out that schools are lagging behind off-campus institutions in this regard, as many off-campus training institutions have already introduced AI teachers. Interestingly, programming education, which falls outside traditional academic subjects, has been setting up up AI and programming courses in primary and secondary schools, attracting capital investment in recent years. Tongcheng Tongmei, which recently collapsed, is one of the prominent examples in this field.